And I'm coming to you again today. I want to talk with you about more on the Breonna Taylor case. I want to talk to you about the rigged justice system. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the presidential debate and how white supremacy is impacting all that I want to talk about today and what we can do about it, what we need to do about it, okay? So let's start with Breonna Taylor. This young lady, I can't get her out of my mind. I just simply can't get her out of my mind. Let me make sure everything's going okay. I believe it is. Can't get her out of her mind can't get her out of my mind because, largely because I have a daughter. I have a daughter who is not too much older than Breonna Taylor was when she was killed, okay? So this really gets to me, really gets to my heart as a father, okay? And there has been no justice done on her behalf. We know her family got a settlement. That's for the family, but as far as who's responsible for her death, there has been no justice on that, okay? And it's just really sad that that is the case. The three people who are involved, mostly involved here, obviously is Miss Taylor, and then the officer, former Officer Hankinson, and then there is Daniel Cameron, okay? And I'm gonna talk about him in a little bit, okay? Now, before we get to him and all the other stuff, let me just show you something here. There is this campaign, this Say Her Name campaign, and it started because a lot of the victims of police brutality are African American women, but they tend not to get the same attention as when an African American man is killed by white law enforcement. I wanted to bring some attention to that. Again, that is something that is dear to my heart because, once again, I have a daughter. I'm a proud girl dad. And I couldn't imagine what I would do if something like that, God forbid, were ever to happen to my daughter. So I have a report here that I want to refer you all to. It's the Say Her Name report. The Say Her Name report. And you can find this report and learn more about the death of black women at the hands of white police officer at the African American Policy Forum. The African American Policy Forum. That's www.aapf.org. And you can download this report. And it is really good. Has a lot of information here. One of the persons responsible for this report is attorney Kimberly Crenshaw from I think Kimberly Crenshaw. Last I heard, she was living in LA, but she may have since moved. I'm not sure. But she is one of the persons behind this report, this Say Her Name report. And the Say Her Name title is important because oftentimes, again, black women victims of police brutality, they go unnoticed. No one knows their name. So to keep their memory alive and to say and to affirm that their lives matter as much as any black male victim of police brutality, the sisters came up with the moniker, Say Her Name. So right now I want to say Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor. And Breonna Taylor is one of many. This report contains the names and pictures of other African American women who have died at the hands of white law enforcement officers. Another victim, Alexia Christian of Atlanta, Georgia. Alexia Christian of Atlanta, Georgia. Maya Hall of Baltimore, Maryland. Miriam Carey of Washington, D.C. Gabriela Navarez of Sacramento, California. Miriam Carey, as I just said, from D.C. Chantel Davis of Brooklyn, New York. Melissa Williams, Cleveland, Ohio. Shamel Edwards, Las Vegas, Nevada. Kendra James, Portland, Oregon. Latanya Haggerty, Chicago, Illinois. Sandra Bland, she died in Waller County, Texas, but I believe she was from Chicago. Shelley Frey, Houston, Texas. Margaret Laverne Michelle, Los Angeles, California. Eleanor Bumpers, the Bronx, New York. Catherine Johnston, Atlanta, Georgia. Alberto Sproul, Harlem, New York. Tanisha Anderson, Cleveland, Ohio. Michelle Kuzar, I could be pronouncing that wrong, Phoenix, Arizona. Pearlie Golden, Hearn, Texas. Kayla Moore, Berkeley, California. Sharice Francis, Queens, New York. Taisha Miller, Riverside, California. Natasha McKenna, Fairfax County, Virginia. Shanique Proctor, Bessemer, Alabama. Kayam Livingston, Brooklyn, New York. You see? Ayanna Stanley Jones, Detroit, Michigan. She looks like I think she was 7 years old when she was killed. Rika Boyd, Chicago, Illinois. Tarika Wilson, Lima, Ohio. I could go on and on. All of these names, now let me ask you this, all of these persons, all of these black women were killed by a law enforcement officer. How many of those names do you know? How many of those names do you know? I recognize one. I think I recognize only one, and that was Sandra Bland. Okay? And unfortunately, you could add to that list Breonna Taylor. And Breonna Taylor, God bless her, may she rest in peace. She is getting more attention than most of the black women tend to get. Malcolm X said the most disrespected person in America, maybe in the world, are black women. And when I think about slavery to now, it's a true statement. That's the reason why I want to see Kamala Harris become vice president, and I want to see a black woman on the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, not a white woman, not a Hispanic Latino woman, although I'm happy that a Latino woman is on the Supreme Court. She has done a great job. Justice Sotomayor has done a great job. But I thought one of those picks that Obama had as one of the big things that I had with him should have been a black woman. Okay? Should have been a black woman. Now, if Joe wins, and that's one of the reasons why we need to push for Joe to win, because he has promised that he would nominate a black woman for the U.S. Supreme Court. But let me say this. Not only do we need to vote in record numbers to get Joe elected, we also need to vote in record numbers to flip the Senate and to keep the House. because you know the process. The process is the president nominates someone for SCOTUS, but it takes the Senate to confirm them. And we saw Mitch McConnell block several of Obama's picks, one of which was a black woman from North Carolina, who Obama nominated to sit on a federal district court in North Carolina. I can't call her name right now. Somebody send me her name. I would definitely want to get her name, because hopefully if Joe wins, she will be renominated. But her nomination was blocked by Mitch McConnell and I think Richard Burr, who North Carolina senator. And so I want to see a black woman on the United States Supreme Court. That is something that I want, a black woman on the United States Supreme Court. It is past time for that. So I wanted to point that out and say those things in honor of my daughter and wife and all the females in my family and all the black females across the country, whom Malcolm X said is the most disrespected person in America. All right, now, let's bring Breonna Taylor's image back up again. She was a beautiful young woman. She was doing well in life. From what I understand, she, like most young folks, may have had some growing pains, some growing issues early in her adulthood, but did she pull it together. And man, she became a very productive young woman, becoming an EMS, an emergency medical service person, a paramedic, I think. And so God bless her memory, and I pray for her family. No justice has been done in her case, however. No justice whatsoever. And while I talk about her case, let me also talk about the fact that white supremacy is throughout the criminal justice system. I am in the criminal justice system as an attorney. I practice personal injury law. I practice criminal defense law. I practice family law. And I practice these areas of law with my daughter, attorney Chloe Corbett. And we deal with it daily. We see it all the time, where white supremacy is all a part of the legal system. And not just the criminal justice system. It seems like that is where it seems to show its head the most, because, you can point to mass incarceration of black men, but it's not just there. It is also in the civil courts as well. Okay? Now, the Sentencing Project published a report in 2018 regarding racial disparities in the United States criminal justice system. And let me just highlight a few of the things that they found. Regarding policing, in 2016, black Americans comprised 27% of all individuals arrested in the United States. Now that may seem like, it's not a big deal, it's not a great number, but when you account for the fact that black Americans only make up roughly 14% of the population, then it begins to come home that 27% is double the share of our population in this country. That is a disparity. And disparities are very, very telling, very revealing. Because basically, if you make up 13% of the population, you should be 13% of the people getting arrested. You should be 13% of the people in prison, in jail. You should be 13% of the people on probation. You should be 13% of the people who are in the court system or lower. Okay? But when you represent twice the percentage that you are in the general population, there is something going on. And that something is white supremacy. That's what that something is, white supremacy. Black youth accounts for 15% of all U.S. children, but make up 35% of all the juvenile arrests. Okay, 15%. So let's go back to disparity. 15% black children. So there ought to be 15% black children in the juvenile system. But it's 35%. That's more than double. That's, I don't see the math right in front of me, but that's about 2.1, 2.2 times as likely for black children to end up in the juvenile system. Okay? More than 1 in 4 people arrested for drug violations in 2015 was black. More than one, that's 25%. Once again, keep in mind, we only make up 13% of the population. So why are twice, and somebody may say, well, it's because blacks use more drugs than anyone else. That's not true. Or that blacks are more prone to criminality. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true at all. That's a racist statement. That's a racist belief. That is saying that black people by nature, by race, are more prone to use drugs, more prone to break the law. That is fundamentally racist. It's not true. There's something else going on, and that something else is the fact that African Americans are experiencing systemic racial injustice in the criminal justice system. All right? And remember I told you the black nominee that Obama tried to get on the federal bench when he was president, and she was blocked by Mitch McConnell and Richard Burr, North Carolina senator. Well, someone sent me her name. Her name is Pat Timmons Goodson. Pat Timmons Goodson. And she was on the North Carolina Supreme Court and had been a North Carolina Court of Appeals judge. So she had just impeccable qualifications. Great law student, great lawyer, great judge on both the North Carolina Appellate Court and the North Carolina Supreme Court. So it was just a step up for her to go to the federal bench because of her qualifications, but she was blocked. Okay, she was blocked. So that's why I feel strongly that we need a black woman on the U.S. Supreme Court. So white supremacy is impacting the criminal justice system in big ways. And I'll go so far as saying that the criminal justice system is rigged. It's rigged. And that's coming from a criminal defense lawyer. Excuse me, just a minute. It's rigged. The criminal justice system is rigged. But not only is the criminal justice system rigged, the whole American system is rigged against black Americans and has been for 400 years and still continue to be. I know we got rid of slavery, we dismantled segregation. Oh, but the fight continues. The fight continues. It never stopped. It never stopped. And so the result of that fight is that a disproportionate percentage of black people end up in the criminal justice system and end up incarcerated and end up on probation, etc. Why? White supremacy is the answer. How does it work? Well, a lot of it stems from the fact that of poverty, of broken schools. We could go on and on. Broken schools, poverty. Of course, there are broken families that are the result of poverty and all the systemic racism that we've dealt with. And all of that results in blacks being more policed than other groups and therefore more, prosecuted in the criminal justice system. So white supremacy is at the root of all of this. Now, this may sound radical, but it's not radical. It may sound radical. If it sounds radical to you and it's unbelievable, and that's because you have not done the research and you're not in this space like I'm in it every day. I see it every day. I study this. And so this is not radical. This is not hyperbola. This is not that. These are the facts. These are the facts. And you can do something about it. You can do something about it. Sentencing African Americans and Latinos comprise 29% of the U.S. population, but they make up 57% of the U.S. prison population. Okay? So there's all kinds of disparities here. All kinds. And that brings me to, well, let me give you this stat. When African American men are prosecuted, convicted, and then labeled as a felon, that has huge ramifications for their lives. Okay? And get a load of this. In 2010, 8% of all adults in the United States had a felony conviction on their records. 8% of all adults in America had a felony conviction. But for black men, the rate was 33%. 33%. 33%. 1 in 3, a third. Okay? That is almost 4 times higher for black men. This makes sense to you only if you believe black men are just criminals. Just more criminal than everybody else. That is the only way this makes any sense. But if you dispel that racist, foolish notion, then this doesn't make sense. In other words, there's a dead cat on the line, and that dead cat is systemic racism. It's white supremacy. It is a rigged system. It's a rigged system. And we saw this rigged system with the Breonna Taylor case, okay? And I told you in my last video about Breonna Taylor that the system is rigged. I told you that. And now it's coming out. It's coming out that it was rigged, right? Because a judge has ordered Daniel Cameron, Kentucky AG, to release the transcripts of the grand jury deliberations. And let me tell you, I've never seen this before, especially where a grand jury member sues and asks a judge to force the prosecutor to release grand jury transcripts. I've never seen that. It's hard to get grand jury transcripts. In just about every criminal case we handle where there's been an indictment, we request grand jury transcripts and we hardly ever get them. You have to fight tooth and nail to get, because they try to maintain the secrecy of the grand jury. So for one of the grand jury members to essentially say that the AG, Daniel Cameron, wasn't being honest, okay, that is, I would say it's unprecedented. It's unprecedented for one of the grand jury members to say, no, what Mr. Cameron has said on TV in that press conference is not really what happened. And we would like, Your Honor, for the transcript to come out so everybody can see that that it didn't go down the way he represented. Trust me, that is unprecedented. Okay? Now, why do again I say this was rigged against Breonna Taylor? Because of Daniel Cameron. Okay? Because of him. Because of what he did. Well, what is it that he did? I told you in the last video what he did. His job was to go into the grand jury and present the evidence that he had, not to prove that the officers were justified in what they did, not to prove that the officers were innocent, but to prove that there was probable cause for the indictment. Now, I know that police officers get deference where other people don't. And that to me is the problem. That's part of the problem. They shouldn't get any deference at all. They should be treated like everyone else. Otherwise, we have basically three different justice systems, three different criminal justice systems. That is, we have a justice system for black people. I would say black and brown people. A justice system, well, actually four. I'm gonna say there are four different justice systems. A justice system for black and brown people. A justice system for poor people. A justice system for white people. And a justice system for police. Because I've seen so many times where all four of those groups are dealt with very differently. Okay? A justice system that handles black defendants one way that it doesn't handle for other people. And a justice system, a lot of times, that handles prosecutions different if the victim is black. Okay? In other words, if you kill a white person versus a black person, you're going to get the book thrown at you. We saw that when the black police officer in Minneapolis killed that white woman. He's in prison. He got 12 years and her family got $20 million. Okay? Why? Because he killed a white woman. Had that woman been black, it would have been completely different. And had the police officer been white, it would have been totally different. That is proof. It's anecdotal proof, but I just went through statistics that shows you it's not just anecdotes. This is really happening. There are different criminal justice systems depending on who you are. Let me tell you a story. I was representing a young white man many years ago on a criminal charge. And I have represented many whites, okay? Many whites. And so I was trying to get this young man a favorable deal with the prosecutor, okay? If I recall the case, he was as guilty as could be. But I knew I had a trump card. I knew, no pun intended, by the way. Well, maybe there is a little pun intended on that. But I knew I had an ace in the hole with this young man. And you knew what that ace in the hole was? The fact that he was white. I knew that gave me an advantage. So I'll never forget when I was talking with the prosecutor, I got the young man's picture up on my phone. And as I was talking to the prosecutor, I didn't let him know initially that I was talking about a white kid, and he didn't know. So we're negotiating back and forth. It was a white prosecutor, and he wouldn't get to where I was trying to get him. So I pulled out my phone, got the picture, and I showed him, the image of this white dude. Okay, young white boy, barely over his teens. Okay, and I didn't do it in a way like, it was so obvious. I was just like, well, look, you see how young he is? See how young this young man is? That, this is a true story. That caused that prosecutor to give me the deal that I asked for this young man. It's a true story. I'm not lying about that. I flashed this picture and that moved that case. All right? There are definitely different justice systems in America, okay? Daniel Cameron should have simply presented the evidence that his office found to the grand jury, and the grand jury's only job should have been whether there was probable cause. All these factual issues that Daniel Cameron talked about, whether the officers were justified, whether 1 or 12 people heard the officers announce themselves, all of those facts should have gone to a jury. And they should have decided whether or not those were actual facts or just, disputed facts. That was not for Daniel. And that was not for the grand jury. The grand jury's job is to see if there's enough evidence, and it doesn't take much, if there's enough evidence to bring, to meet the probable cause standard and to indict the person. Had that been you and me, oh wow, or my clients, there was definitely probable cause and they would have gotten indicted. But Daniel Cameron protected those officers. That is a rigged system. This black man, at least his skin is black, he protected those officers. He saw to it that they were not prosecuted. He even admitted, after the judge ordered him to release the transcripts, he even admitted that he never, ever presented evidence to the grand jury for any kind of homicide indictment. So the result of that was that one officer, just one officer, was charged for missing Breonna Taylor. And that's really what happened. He was charged because he missed. Some of his bullets missed her body and went into somebody else's apartment, and he was charged for that. Had his bullets went into the body of Breonna Taylor, he wouldn't have got indicted at all. Now make any sense out of that? And Ben Crump says that his bullets went in the house, apartment of a white woman, of white people and black people, but he was only indicted because his bullets went in the house of white people. That's what the attorney for Breonna Taylor's family, Ben Crump, says. All right? The system is rigged, folks. It's rigged. But there is something that you can do about it, which brings me to my next topic, and that is this debacle that we witnessed a couple of nights ago called the presidential debate. It's just a complete debacle, and it was a debacle because of the man who sits in the Oval Office, who is an embarrassment to this country. He is a total, absolute embarrassment to this country. I read a news report that talked about the reactions of countries, of other countries, and they were laughing at us. They were making all the other countries look to America for leadership. And when America is struggling the way it has over the past 4 years, these countries are sort of left without leadership because they look to this country for leadership. If all is well with America, a lot of times all is well across the globe. But when America has a leader like this, an autocrat, the rest of the world is like, what is going on? He's an embarrassment to us. I could give you so many descriptions of this man. But the one I want to talk about right now is the fact that he's a white supremacist. There is no question about that. I knew Donald Trump was a white supremacist before he got elected. Okay? Because I was aware of how he dealt with those young men who were exonerated for raping a white woman. I was aware of that. I was aware of the fact that he and his father had gotten sued back in the 70s for discriminating against black people. I was aware of how he dealt with Barack Obama, discrediting and disrespecting Obama with the notion that Obama was not born in America, and requiring him, or basically forcing him to show his birth certificate. That made me feel like what I saw happening in South Africa during apartheid. All the blacks in South Africa had to carry their papers so that they could pull them out whenever white people ordered them to, and show them their identity and where they live. And that is demeaning. That is disrespectful. That is racist. Trump did that to Obama, the first black president. And then when he announced his presidential candidacy, he came down and called Mexicans murderers and rapists. Okay? I didn't need any more. I knew we were dealing with a white supremacist. And then in the Charlottesville race riots, if you will, protests, whatever you want to call it. I mean, he called Nazis very fine people. I mean, what more proof? And there are a bunch of other things. African nations, S-hole nations, Haiti, all of them got AIDS. I mean, here recently, defending the Confederate flags and all that, defending all of that stuff, calling Kaepernick an SOB for protesting against racial discrimination, telling suburban women that if Biden becomes president, the blacks are coming to kill you and to rape you and to steal. And what's so disheartening is that a lot of white preachers are repeating this, or they're telling him and he's repeating them. I mean, a lot of white preachers. This man is a total, absolute white supremacist. There's no question about that. And it really came out at this debate. if we needed any more proof, if anybody was on the fence, if anyone was wondering, is he really a white supremacist? That should have proved it to you if you needed any, but you shouldn't have needed any more proof. But if you needed any more, that should have proved it. Especially when he said to a hateful, violent, white supremacist group to stand down, but stand by. Stand down. I take that to mean stand down so I can get elected, so that we can continue working on our white supremacist agenda. Okay? That's what stand down meant in my mind. And then when he followed it up with stand by, that means stand down, let me get elected, but stand by, because after I get elected, we're gonna work together, okay? And we're gonna continue implementing the white supremacist agenda. I'm gonna give you further instructions, okay? Even at the election, remember in that debate, he said he want his supporters at the polls watching. He was talking to the Proud Boys then. He was talking to the KKK then. He was talking to the Nazis then. He wanted them at the polls watching. And I believe he's going to cause all kinds of ruckus on November 3rd. All kinds of ruckus on November 3rd, even if it's clear that he lost. I believe he's going to call on the Proud Boys and all the rest of those hateful, violent, racist groups to come and maybe circle the White House or something. There's no telling what may happen November 3rd. Do you follow me? Yes, someone just reminded me that he also said, and thank you for reminding me of that, during this debate, he also said it's racist to have racial sensitivity training. He said it's un-American, hateful to have racial sensitivity training, because in his mind, to remind white people that there's white supremacy in this country, to remind white people that there's systemic racism in this country, to remind white people that there's a legacy of slavery and Jim Crow, hundreds of years of it, to him, that is racist, that is insensitive, that is un-American, because in his mind, all of that's okay. It's okay it's okay in his mind that they enslaved black folks for 250 years. Okay? It's okay that there was segregation and Jim Crow. It's okay that blacks, the criminal justice system and all these other health systems and so forth are replete with systemic racism. That's okay. We're not going to let these folks, Trump's thinking, we're not going to let them come into the government and to our schools and teach our children and all of that about how bad America is. Because we as white people, we shouldn't be ashamed of what we've done to blacks and to other minorities. We shouldn't be ashamed of it. We ought to be proud of it. And that's why he protects the Confederate flags and the Confederate statutes, signing an executive order, making it a felony to bring those symbols down. That is a total white supremacist. He reminds me of the colonizers, not only the ones who enslaved black folks in America, but the colonizers in Africa. This man is deeply, deeply white supremacist, and we just need to come to grips with that as black Americans. He poses an existential threat to us. And when he talks about law and order, getting back to the criminal justice system, that means, if you recall, when he appointed Jeff Sessions as the AG for the country. And immediately they repealed all the consent decrees that was watching over a lot of these police departments. He implemented or reinitiated mandatory minimums on some prison sentences. He instructed U.S. attorneys' offices to charge people with the most serious offense. That's what law and order means when Trump says it. Get those blacks. That's what he's saying. Get them. That is the kind of white supremacists that we're dealing with. Don't worry about these black folks that he got in his pocket or whatever who stood in front of the cameras at the Republican National Convention and said, like Herschel Walker said, it hurts him at his soul when people call Donald Trump a racist. And don't believe Trump. Please don't believe this patronizing mess from Trump about how much he's done for the blacks. That's so paternalistic. He hasn't done virtually anything for blacks. Where are black people right now? Dying from COVID-19 more than anybody else. Unemployed from COVID-19 because more than anybody else. What is he talking about, what he's done for black folks? And the reform that he did with the First Step Act, go to my video and watch the video. I certainly give credit to that law for the few things that it did and the few people that it has helped. I'm not going to dismiss that because, if you lock down like that, any little thing, any little help you get is appreciative. But that was more window dressing than it was real reform. If you want to talk about real reform, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Let's find out, let's deal with those things that's causing all these disparities in the criminal justice system. Let's deal with racial profiling. Better yet, let's deal with the things that causes black folks to end up in the criminal justice system disproportionately, again, like poverty. Okay, let's get some jobs in the black community. Let's bring some manufacturing companies in the black community. Let's spur an economic growth in the black community. Okay? Let's put some money. First of all, get Betsy DeVos, another racist from over the U.S. Department of Education, put somebody in there who is really interested in trying to better public schools and private schools, et cetera, so that blacks can get better education. All of these types of things are the types of things that will really reform the criminal justice system, because black Americans will not be in the criminal justice system as much. So don't tell me about all this that he has done. He brags he's done more for black people than maybe with the exception of Abraham Lincoln. Are you kidding me? Again, it's paternalistic, like we're children. I've done more for the poor little blacks than anybody else. It's like he's our father, like he's Daddy Trump. Why does he have that type of paternalistic, condescending attitude toward blacks? Because he's a white supremacist. Now, what can we do about it? Well, in about 30 days, we can do a lot about it. We can vote. We can vote. We can vote him, Mitch McConnell, and the rest of those GOP senators out of office and everything that comes with them. Okay? We can vote. I love the way Jesse Jackson says, the hands that used to pick cotton now pick presidents. And when we pick presidents, we also pick the judges. We pick the department heads over these federal agencies. Oh, wow. He has already gotten some 300 right-wing judges on the federal bench, which will have ramifications for many years. But if we can just vote, if we can in record numbers get to the polls or the mail-in ballots or whatever you're doing, and do it, black folks, in record numbers, which means not only you vote, but help somebody else vote. Take 5 people to vote with you. Help them get registered. We're coming up to the time where voter registration is about to end. You need to get that done real fast. Voting for now. There are other things that we got to do, but for now, to get rid of this man, imagine 4 more years with this man. Imagine. He's on the record as a white supremacist. He's a cohort, a compatriot. He's in allegiance with violent white supremacist groups. I've never heard of that in my 58 years of a president, in my 58 years, just being blatantly, outright in allegiance with violent white supremacist, racist groups. It's like a president standing on national TV and telling the KKK, stand by. I'm going to need you in a minute. Come on, folks. Come on. Don't let his crazy become our normal. Don't let his crazy become our normal. If we do, I believe we're facing a race war. I do. We got to get that man out of there. And as I come to a close, yes, there is white supremacy in the criminal justice system and all the other systems. Our solution is voting. That's the thing that we can do in just 30 days that can put a halt to much of this stuff. Okay, just 30 days. We ain't got to wait 5 years. In 30 days, our voices can be heard. Big time. All right? And the other thing, there are a bunch of stuff. I've gone through some of these things, but another thing I advise you to do too is to get armed. Yeah, I mean, if you can legally own a gun, I would strongly advise you to do so. And a lot of blacks have already doing so. Blacks are the largest, fastest growing group of new gun owners in the country. And by the way, we started a gun law class called Armed and Informed. Armed and Informed. We started it because we've represented so many people, a lot of them blacks, who got in trouble over gun ownership because they didn't know the law. And so for a small fee, which is much smaller than it would cost you to hire us to represent you in court, you can learn the basic essential gun laws, especially for Texas and the federal law, that could save you a lot. So anyway, that was a shameless plug, but related to this issue still. Vote, 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 vote. Vote, 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 vote. Okay? Vote, 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 vote. And got another message here that I should remind you that another ramification of you voting and us flipping the Senate, keeping the House. When I say us, by the way, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. When I say us, I'm mainly talking us black people. Okay? is this. When George Floyd was murdered, the U.S. House, the Congressional Black Caucus, was able to get a bill passed in the House. I think it's called the George Floyd Policing and Justice Act. I could have that wrong, but it's something like that. And one of the things that it does is it gets rid of qualified immunity for police officers. Go to my YouTube channel and look up the video that talks about that. Very important. All of that can happen. And not only that, but the Voting Rights Act was gutted in 2012. The House has passed a bill that would reestablish parts of the Voting Rights Act that were gutted by the U.S. Supreme Court. All of that can happen and much more within the first 100 days of Joe Biden becoming president if we get him elected and if we flip the Senate and keep the House. That stuff can happen immediately. Okay? Immediately. Some of you on Obamacare. Trump is doing everything he can to gut that. So it's true that elections have consequences. Don't think, well, I ain't no point in me voting. That ain't got nothing to do with my life. Oh, yes, it does. Oh, yes, it does. It can have a huge impact on your life. Don't you believe that? Yes, and make sure you vote in local elections as well. So that's our answer. That's one of the things that we can do immediately. Not the only thing, but it's one of the things that we can do immediately to make our voices heard against white supremacy. All right? I hope you got something from this. We have given you some more information about the Breonna Taylor case. We talked about how the criminal justice system, the legal system is rigged, and just a little bit here on the presidential debate. All of this showing you how white supremacy impacts all of this, but you have the final word on November 3rd. God bless you.